gives me a great pleasure to call upon Professor Helga Kron. Helga is a professor emeritus at the Tel Aviv University. He is a veteran actuary. In fact, as far as back that I can remember Helga. He was a teacher of mine. He's a friend. Helga is a fellow of the World Academy of Arts and Sciences, and he also won the John Bickley Award back in 2011. And Helga has got some presentation to share with us. Please, Helga.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. You know, it's my 52nd year in the insurance business, and we are really celebrating today not only the 70th anniversary of the association, but also it's the 50th anniversary for the first course of actuarial studies in Israel, which was held at the Hebrew U with the collaboration of University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and only I think Aryeh is still from our group, Aryeh Weiss. I'd like to acknowledge his presence here. From the teachers of that course, nobody is still alive, unfortunately, and also from the second course of actuaries that I directed in 77 to 79 at Tel Aviv University. Only I think 4 members are still active and are attending this conference. So we are becoming really older. The most senior member of the association that is attending here is Helga Kron, who surprised us. And Helga, at her time, was the most senior lady in the insurance business in the world, and she held the most senior position at NRG in Holland for quite a number of years. So really some big people. I'd like to welcome also all the guests from abroad, which are very dear to us. It reminds me of the good days when we celebrated the visits of many prominent people from the actuarial world, really the leaders of the actuarial world, when we organized quite a number of international seminars at Tel Aviv University in the 70s and in the 80s. And Malcolm had just mentioned this morning the Austin meeting, which was held exactly 30 years ago. And this gathering today is amazing. It's the first time after 30 years that we are having such an impressive presence of all the members of the association here, and also of many, many important people from abroad. Thank you all and welcome. What I would like to do today is to talk about insurance in a rapidly changing world. And I'd like to take a different approach. I would like to talk really about the global changes rather than focusing on insurance, and only at the end I'll show you something very important about the insurance industry. I think that the insurance industry has a tremendous potential and tremendous opportunity, especially in these days, in this global changing world, and we should devote to it a major part of the talk later on. But first, we should talk about other things. I'm really standing here following the call of my family. And it is my commitment, really, to my family that makes me talk about this topic here, And I'll invite you all, when you'll see what we are talking about, I'll invite you all to join the process on behalf of your families. Because we have to be responsible, and we are responsible and committed to their future. Our generation has caused major damages to the world, and they are creating tremendous threat right now to the future of humanity on planet Earth. And we have to do something. We have to return to them the same kind of world that we had, and that they will be able to flourish for the future. So we shall talk about some of these issues here. The outline, I'll talk about threats and opportunities first, and then I'll talk a bit about the philosophy and the philosophical framework that the paradigm that we are living in, and the paradigm that should be changing, and the key factor there are the metrics. So we shall emphasize on that. Then we shall talk about the vision, and then I'll invite you to join me on a treasure hunt. And then we shall talk about united humanity. So let's talk about those things. Last week was the gathering of the Global Insurance Forum in Singapore. The Global Insurance Forum is a forum that I participate in the last 4 decades at least. It's a meeting of the heads of the industry. And it takes place annually, and in recent years it takes a major role and takes responsibility for many things that I'll mention later on. And everybody was talking about, in that meeting, everybody was talking about the trends in insurance, about the information, about underwriting issues, about what will happen to motor car business, which is a major business in the insurance. Maybe half of the premiums are in general lines are in that line. What will happen with autonomous cars? Whether the entire line will shrink into product liability maybe, because who is responsible in an accident, in a crash, if it happens? People were still talking about bank insurance, the credit insurance, the role of insurers in the new financial arrangements, about catastrophes, about the pension plans, the DC and the DB and the interest rates and the old products and the new products and health insurance and regulation, and people were complaining about the regulation, etc. And some talks about the global arena. But I like to go above these issues for a while. Everybody is supposed to know the second rule of thermodynamics. The second rule of thermodynamics means that any action, every real process that is taking place is followed by an increase in entropy. Entropy is disorder. Entropy means uncertainty and risk. And most people, when they talk about risk, they think about the threats. But the risks are actually the opportunities, because risks are the only cause that is responsible for change in the world, for development, otherwise, if there would be no risk and we would have lived under conditions of certainty, then there would be no change in our world. It will be quite boring, really. No change, absolutely no change. So risk creates a lot of opportunities. And therefore, we have to understand it better. The current economy of the industrial world is guided by the objective of all players, and assume that each player tries to maximize his or her wealth. And this leads to all kinds of things. It's the entire capitalistic system. It brings about, in the industrial economy, therefore puts a substantial emphasis on economic growth, and actually during the last 2 centuries, more or less, since the Industrial Revolution, we are experiencing a tremendous economic growth in the world. Yet, at the same time, this comes and has introduced substantial new risks into the environment, and also threats, such as the financial and also threats to the society. There are major changes in the pattern of employment. It's not that clear that the new employment patterns will mean that everybody will have work throughout the lifetime. Problems of pensions and retirement systems, inequality in income and wealth distribution, the feeling of helplessness of poor people, pressures related to rapid urbanization, etc., demographic changes, etc., etc. And there are also the environmental risks. The environmental risks are not just climate change. Actually, climate change is a major issue, but it's not the only one. There are many others. There is a question of resilience, decreasing resilience, damages to delicate food chains, pollution to the air and land and water, loss of diversity and other issues. I just came also from another meeting that I was one of its organizers of sustainable brands in the United States 2 weeks ago. And we brought the top experts. One of them holding the Blue Planet Award, which is a top, like the Nobel Prize of environmental issues in the world, Mattis Wackernagel. He developed metrics that show that we are already consuming 1.6 times what Earth can give us in ecological services in a year. That means that in the month of August somewhere, we'll be depleting our annual budget of ecological resources for this year. People can live with overdrawing accounts for a short while by borrowing money, by selling some assets, doing something. But you cannot endure, it's not sustainable to live like that, and definitely not when we live like that on a global scope. And these are new trends, because until about 7 years ago, we were still consuming less than what Earth was able to do in 1 year. So people think that we talk about the end of planet Earth, which is, of course, a silly idea. Planet Earth will continue for sure. Actually, maybe it will thrive better without us rather than with us. At the World Academy of Arts and Science, we hold for the last 3 years a series of meetings, maybe 15 meetings already, about the future of humanity. And I think that there is a wall-to-wall agreement that we are reaching fast a tipping point, a point of no return. It doesn't mean that humanity will be destroyed within such a short period, but it means that we are reaching a very unstable environment that would be very difficult to fix. And the historian Toynbee said that civilization died by suicide, not by murder. And we have to think about it, because we are sort of in that direction. It is our challenge now, humanity's survival, not the Earth's challenge. And it calls for a paradigm shift. It calls for a transformation, not a change, a transformation. And we coined the term just a few years ago, the term reboot humanity, which is now well accepted all over the world. It's being used, I've heard it already in many occasions, in many conferences and meetings. We still have a short-term window of opportunity to bring about the required transformation. And the YZC Center, the one is a for-benefit corporation that I established several years ago, is it's a not-for-profit, is working in that direction. Because what we did, we established a consortium, a voluntary agreement among the leading transformation agents in the world. These are the elders of the business coaching and business mentoring in North America, in Europe, and in Asia. And we are all working now in the direction of bringing about the required change in corporations, in organizations, in governments, in municipalities. So this is what we are doing. How we got there is not that interesting. It doesn't matter. The question is how to get out of the situation. Jim Rohn once said, when they ask me why I do something, I often say, why not? And actually, a better answer would be, why not us, not just me? And even a better one would be, why not us now? Okay? And that's what I'm calling you to do. I would really need your help, not me, it's the whole group. We need the help of each of us here to work in that direction, to understand what we're talking about, and to work in that direction because it's an urgent issue. Look at this strange photo. Where does it take place? Where is this guy standing? Who is this guy? The guy looks at Earth and maybe asks himself, how did we get there? What should we do in order to prevent a situation like this that we'll have to go somewhere else out of Earth? I don't know where. So if we are aware of this situation, then we should think about the question, how come people don't see it? How come that we are not aware of the threats, the very real threats, and how come we ignore them? The problem is that most of the surrounding processes around us are not linear. We are used to think in terms of linear processes, but most of the processes are not linear. They are exponential, like hockey sticks. And in exponential processes, it takes a long time before you suddenly see the change on a large absolute scale. And when you wake up and see those things, they are already at such a magnitude that it's very hard to change the direction or to do something to control the impact. So people are usually in a comfort zone, and people try to remain in a status quo and to keep the status quo. Even they are not that happy with the status quo, they always fear of the uncertainty. And therefore, we prefer to be there. But really, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Because then we have to do something, and we have to do it fast. Peter Drucker, a very famous writer and manager, he said only three things happen naturally in organization: friction, confusion, and underperformance. All the rest is lack of leadership. So really, we are in a crisis of leadership all over the world. And you see the extreme points that are popping up in such situations. For example, in the election time in the United States. Last week, in the United States, in the conference, one of the independent candidate for presidency of the United States attended with her 3 A's, attended for 3 days the particular sessions that we ran at that conference, trying to learn what you can do. So what is the paradigm shift that we have to go through? Right now, the economy is the result of industrial revolution, and it puts the economy as the main target. And we serve the economy, and we are taught to serve the economy. But the new economy is very different, and I'll speak about it. The new economy is something that has to serve our values. The economy has to serve our values. It is an instrument to serve our values. And we have to satisfy these values. What's the difference? In the old traditional economy that all of you have studied at the beginning of your career, it's the capitalistic system, which assumes that there are only three sources three resources: land, capital, and labor, and they are all at shortage. Whereas in the new economy, we have new sources like information, data, knowledge, and this is unlimited and growing. So you see what happens here. We develop, this is a warning for time. Well, okay. So we are facing now a situation of a new situation. This is something that didn't exist a few years ago. It connects everybody on Earth, and it created a new kind of person. It's a global connected person. Here is, for example, a guy that nobody has recognized his name about 5 years ago. On one day, he committed suicide in Tunisia, and it created YZC, and it created the Arab Spring, water spring. The new economy does not work according to the old ideas of mass production, mass merchandising, mass marketing, insurance policies that were created for masses. But it's a completely different concept. We have the Internet of Things that created a situation where the marginal cost of production of many products is becoming zero, practically zero, close to zero. It's a completely new world. It has created, or it is creating, a digital banking, a new kind of monetary system that we'll see within a very short period. Bitcoin is the first thing. A bank robbery may look like this. The banks that once considered to be a brick wall is now really a domino brick. And so we have to strive really to sustainability. But sustainability is not enough. We have to strive toward beyond sustainability. Sustainability means don't leave footprints. But it's insufficient at this point. We have to leave green footprints already to rectify some of the damages that we have done. So, and we have to aspire towards survivability. The key to the thing is a new compass. Peter Drucker again said, we get what we measure. We don't just measure what we get, but we get what we measure. You can't manage without measuring. The measuring, the metrics, is the compass. It shows us the direction. And right now, everything is geared toward maximization of GDP. That's the only goal for countries. And for business, we measure only the financial capital. Look at one fact. In February, I took the statistics of American statistics. In February this year, traded firms had a market value of about 7 times larger than the book values. In other words, the accounting that we use, the metrics that we use for business, becomes less relevant because it doesn't measure other forms of capital. It measures only the financial capital. It doesn't measure the human capital, the IP, the natural capital. It doesn't measure many types of capital. So we need a new dashboard. We helped the UN just recently. This is from April this year. We helped the UN since last year in establishing a new form of metrics, and they came up in April with 17 measures, not just economic measures. I'll skip this. The old economy is supposed to, the capitalistic system, the pure one, is supposed to lead to, through the invisible hand, to a new economy that is having a price system, an equilibrium, which is reached automatically, and secondly, it is supposed to be the optimal allocation of all the goods, the resources, and the services. However, it's not necessarily optimal. It may lead to desert, it may lead to a thriving society, but in our case, it creates some problems. So what can we do? There are many problems with the capitalistic system, and I'll skip that. Just last month, the Time magazine came up with this title, Capitalism. The market are choking the economy. How to save it? There is no sense to save the traditional capitalistic system because it's irrelevant today. We need a new paradigm. It's irrelevant. We have to develop something better than that. Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with a paradigm that has created it. So we have to make the paradigm shift, and we have to do something else. How can companies thrive in tomorrow's new economy? There are ways. And here I'm coming to something interesting. In 2005, there was a report about the impact of climate change, the Nicholas Stern report. They estimated that we have to block the temperature increase of the world temperature to maximum 2 degrees. And they estimated that we need about 2% of global GDP every year to be invested in countermeasuring this effect. And I immediately calculated that 2% of global GDP is close to $2 trillion, a tremendous amount. So this is the issue that we have to solve. So then I recall the story of the treasure hunt. From my childhood, I was always excited about those adventure books telling about how you know, to find the treasures that the pirates have hidden somewhere. But we have to find now a huge treasure, $2 trillion, just for climate change. And you know what? For many years, I'm using insurance mechanisms as a leverage to solve major problems in the world. Because insurance is related to almost any aspects of our life. And for example, we use it in 1980 to increase the food production in the entire Latin America, in Central and South America, by developing crop insurance in those countries. So just 3 people managed to do the miracle there. I'm really asking you to join me in making a miracle now, because we have to save the world. It's a miracle to do it. But Ben-Gurion said that in Israel, in order to be realistic, you have to believe in miracles. So let's try and bring a miracle here and use the insurance mechanism to that direction. Let's try it. It's true that I'm direct descendant of Aaron the priest, but I'm not a prophet. And it's true, you can trust me, that I never touch drugs. So I'm not drugged when I'm talking to you, I'm not drunk either. So what is this thing about miracles? Yes, we can do it. Let's try it. Look, the insurance industry is the only long-term investor in the world. And the insurance industry, and mainly the retirement funds, and financial institutions, manage a portfolio of $80 trillion. And every year, the insurance industry reinvests about $7 to $10 trillion. So $2 trillion out of it is not that much. So the question is how to direct it to these directions, just for climate change. And maybe how to put this amount into operation. And this is our money. This is the money that everybody saved. It's our money, all the people money. It's just being managed by insurance industry. And it is people's right to determine that this money should be invested in the direction that they need in order to guarantee the survival of Earth, of humanity on Earth. Okay? And there is a movement already in the United States in that direction. But, so, what happens? Why does not the insurance industry work in that direction yet? There are all kinds of arguments. I had big debates in that. But the major issue really, people say fiduciary liability, how can we boycott a large section of the current stock market that is not working in favor of the environment. But the real issue is that most of these things are related to a major problem in the capitalistic system, which is called, in economic terms, externalities. When the insurance company invests or considers some investment, they look at the cash that they'll get, and they don't see about the other benefits that may come from that investment. You know, if it helps preventing climate change, maybe it helps the insurance industry a little bit by preventing some of the damages that the insurance industry pays for, you know, floods and whatever. But we have to find a way to internalize these externalities. There are many ways to do it. There are many ways to do it. Possible ways: pollution tax, subsidizing emission, reduction of subsidizing the rate of return on the investment, on these investments, minimum annuities and whatever. They can determine all kinds of rules. This calls for a special relationship between insurance industry and the public sector, and maybe also the unions. In Israel, we have a long experience, and we don't have time to talk about it, but the beginning of the first 4 or 5 decades of Israel, we reached very high saving rates and very high investment rate in the economy because of intervention, governmental intervention. This is the job of the government to do it with the pension money. So if we'll do that, we'll be hitting 2 targets with the same arrow. Because on the one hand, we'll prevent the environmental damages. On the other hand, we shall solve a major social issue and the retirement issue. And it's the time to think practically about this partnership. And we have to, the government does not bear a special cost by doing it, because anyhow the government will have to find some solution to these employment problems or whatever. So this is a major issue. And when the Stern report was published, I'd like to finish it. When the Stern report was published, I started talking with the top of the insurance industry in 2005. They established a committee to work on a convention. And in 2012, in Rio de Janeiro, there was this summit, the UN Summit on Climate Change and Environmental Changes. I was a member of the Israeli delegation to that mission, to that meeting. But not coincidentally, on the same week, at another corner of Rio de Janeiro, there was the Global Insurance Forum, which was called at that time the International Insurance Society, was meeting at another corner of Rio, and we had the signatory ceremony of that convention. I was a keynote speaker there at that event. I was very honored to do that. For that, we have to change all kinds of things. We have to change certain laws. We have to change the corporations law and whatever. And we have to change the educational system, etc., etc., etc. Can we do it? That's the question. We have to change the metrics. Can we do it? The answer is yes, we can. And the beauty of this slogan, really, many people haven't noticed it. What is so special about it? 3 languages. Yes in English, oui in French, and can in Hebrew. Okay? So we can do it. You don't drown by falling into the water. You drown by staying too long underneath the water. And we are already too long there. So, I'd like to summarize. Keep the first picture, the family. I don't want my kids and my grandkids to ask me, Grandpa, where were you in 2016 when it was still possible to make a change? Think about it. It's your families as well. So we have to make those changes. Join us in this process. Support this movement. Let's move the government in this direction. Let's move the insurance industry in that direction, and we can solve the problem. And finally, I'd like to leave you with a magic number. A magic number. Because if you like to support this system, please call me or write me. And we'll make magic. We are doing it already. It's a miracle, and yes, we can. Thank you very much. Happy anniversary, Israel.